Mao Zedong, 1893–1976. Mao Zedong was one of the founders of the Communist Party of China, is a person who has made great contributions to unifying the Chinese mainland and leading the Chinese people to build socialism. He became the first president of the People's Republic of China since the declaration of its founding, October 1, 1949. Mao Zedong, leader of the Communist Party and state of the People's Republic of China, one of the most prominent political figures in modern Chinese history. He is the great leader of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, one of the founders of the CCP since July 1921, is a person who has made great contributions to unifying the Chinese mainland and leading the Chinese people to build socialism. He became the first president of the People's Republic of China, PRC, since the declaration of its founding, October 1, 1949. He was born on December 26, 1893, the year of the snake, in a poor farmer family in Chanshan, Hunan Province, southern China, and died in Beijing on September 9, 1976, at the age of 83. His father was Mao Shunsheng, his mother was Mrs. Van Ky Mai, both Hunan people. As a child, Mao Zedong attended school intermittently. In 1913-1918, he studied at Hunan Provincial Normal School 1. The teacher who had the deepest and most lasting influence on him was scholar Duong Suong-te, a philosophy professor and Confucian researcher. Duong Suong-te loves reading magazine Stanton edited by Tran Doc Tu, head of literature department, Polytechnic University. After reading, he introduced this magazine to students. Mao Zedong became an avid reader of the magazine Tan then and became politically active, becoming a leader of student organizations in Truong SA. Due to Yang Chengji's influence, Mao Zedong officially entered the path of political activity and achieved extremely important success. In 1917, Mao Zedong and some other students founded a research group named New Dan Studies Association and became the leader of this group. In 1918, Mao Zedong graduated from teacher training school. With Yang Chengji's help, in August 1918, he worked as a library staff member at Peking University. In 1919, he returned to Hunan and published the magazine Truongjiang Commented. In 1920 founded a communist group in Hunan. In July 1921 participated in the conference to establish the Communist Party of China, member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party since the Third Congress, June 1923. From operating bases in the countryside, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the core military force of the revolutionary struggle in which he had a decisive role in recruiting and assembling forces, was formed. Established August 1, 1927. During the period of National Communist Cooperation, he served as an alternate member of the Kuomintang Central Committee from the First Congress, January 1924, and secretary of the Communist Party's Agricultural Affairs Committee, 1926. Leader of the Harvest Uprising, September 1927. Established a revolutionary base at Tin Quang Mountain, 1928. Chairman of the Government of the Soviet Republic of China, revolutionary government established in the liberated zone in 1931. Member of the Politburo of the Communist Party, 1933, participated in leading the Long March. At the Tuanya Conference, January 1935, he was elected a standing member of the Politburo and a member of the Military Leadership Committee of the Party Central Committee. From then on, he was in fact the highest leader of the Communist Party. Chairman of the Politburo and Chairman of the Party Central Committee Secretariat, March 1943. Chairman of the Party Central Committee, April 1945. Chairman of the Government of the People's Republic of China, Chairman of the Political Consultation Conference, September 1949. Under the leadership of the CCP, the Liberation Army defeated Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces in a bloody civil war, paving the way for the proclamation of the People's Republic of China on October 1, 1949. Founding the country, Mao Zedong became the first president of the People's Republic of China. Leading the work of building the country's socialist society, Mao Zedong set out the task of eliminating life of hunger, disease, and ignorance. In 1958, the Great Leap Forward movement and the People's Commune were launched. In 1966, the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution launched. In 1974, the Three Worlds Theory was proposed. Mao Zedong's great merit is that he gathered the people's forces under the leadership of the CCP, unifying the vast country of China. He wrote many works on philosophy, military, and politics to serve the revolution and build the new China. Main works: discussion of contradictions, discussion of practice, strategic issues of the Chinese Revolutionary War, discussion of long-term fighting, discussion of new democracy. Articles: discussion conference on literature and arts in Yan'an, the issue of properly resolving conflicts within the people. The Communist Party of China considers Mao Zedong's ideology as the first ideological basis of the Chinese Revolution. On September 9, 1976, Mao Zedong passed away, ending the vibrant political life of the famous revolutionary and leader of the party and state of China. Mao Zedong has passed away, but his great political influence still lives on in the cause of the Chinese people. The first revolutionary activities. Beijing, Anarchism and Marxism, 1917 to 1919. Mao comes Beijing, where his teacher Duong Suong Te is teaching at Beijing University. Duong assigned him to be the university librarian's assistant Li Daiqiu, who soon became a founder Communist Party of China. Li is the author of a series of articles published in newspapers New Youth about the event October Revolution in Russia, during the time that the party Bolshevik under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin come to power. Lenin is an advocate of socio-political theory of Marxism, developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Li's articles increased the influence of Marxism to the doctrines of the revolutionary movement of Chinese people. When becoming a person progressive, Mao was initially influenced by anarchism belonged to Peter Kropotkin, the most prominent radical theory at that time. Afterwards, he joined Li's research and development group Marxism during the winter of 1919. Because of low wages, Mao had to live in a cramped room with 7 students who non-different, but he believes that the scenery is beautiful. Beijing will repay you for the hardships in your life. At university, Mao was humiliated by other students due to his rural Hunan background, dialect, and low status. He joined the Department of Philosophy and Social Journalism, focusing on writing letters and discussing with people like Tran Doc Tu, Hothich, and Qian Xiantong. Mao's time in Beijing ended in the spring of 1919, when he arrived Shanghai with friends who are preparing to go to France. He did not return to Truong SA, where his mother was terminally ill. She died in October 1919 and her husband died in January 1920. New Culture and Political Protests, 1919 to 1920. On May 4, 1919, students in Beijing gathered at the Gate Tiananmen to protest against the Chinese government's weak resistance to Japanese expansion in China. The resentful patriots were affected by the Japanese concessions in the 21 claims which it sent to the Chinese government in 1915. With the compromise of Beiyang government belonged to Don Kwai in Treaty of Versailles, Japan was allowed to receive territories in Shandong. The territory suffered virtue control. Protests broke out across the country with May 4 movement, as it began on May 4, 1919, and was fueled with new cultural movement believes that China has lost socially and is culturally underdeveloped. July 23 year 1921, Mao participated in the first establishment Congress Communist Party of China in Shanghai. 2 years later, at the Third Congress, 1923, he was elected Party Central Committee, only 5 people included. January of the year 1924, according to Policy National, Communist Cooperation, Mao Zedong attended the first Congress of the Kuomintang meeting in Guangzhou and was elected as an alternate member of the Central Committee of the Kuomintang. Then he went on his way Shanghai, worked at the National Party Executive Committee, then returned the following year Guangzhou acting head of the Kuomintang's propaganda department, then also serving as a member of the party's Peasant Mobilization Committee. At this time he suffered Tran Doc Tu pushed out of the Central Committee of the Communist Party at the 4th Congress meeting in his absence in January of that year 1925. At the 2nd Congress of the Kuomintang, January 1, 2019.1926, he was again elected as an alternate member of the Central Committee of the Kuomintang and acting head of the Propaganda Department until May 1926. After Chiang Kai-shek turned to repression Communist Party, Mao Zedong advocated armed struggle with Chiang, but it was unsuccessful. Tran Doc Tu accept and be disgraced. Mao Zedong then retired to his hometown to be born. Hunan Peasant Movement Survey Report, the first important work of Maoism. War and Revolution. Mao escaped White Terror in the year 1927 and leadership the Autumn Harvest Uprising live Truong SA, Hunan but fail. The remnants of Mao's guerrilla army of less than 1,000 people sought refuge in the mountains Kwangsun Province, where the Hunan and Hunan provinces border Jiangxi. Year 1928 this army merged with the army of Chu Duke, established the Fourth Army of Workers and Peasants, led by Chu Duke as the corps commander. Mao contributed to the construction of the base, which the government and army carried out guerrilla warfare effective, implemented land reform. It is here from 1931 arrive 1934, Government Soviet Republic of China was established and Mao was elected chairman of the Provisional Central Government. During this period, Mao married Ha Tu-tran, after Duong Kai Tuesday was killed by Nationalist Party forces. This Soviet zone became the residence of the Communist Party leadership fleeing Chiang Kai-shek's persecution in major cities, mainly Shanghai. Under the pressure of the Kuomintang's sweeping siege campaigns, within the Communist Party leadership, there was a struggle for power and a struggle over policies and tactics. The Orthodox faction of Moscow, which is represented by the Group 28 Bolsheviks, prevailed and Mao was gradually pushed out of important positions. With determination to destroy the Communists, October 1934 Chiang Kai-shek directly commanded 500,000 troops to encircle and attack the Central Soviet zone, forcing the Red Army to make a bloody way to leave this place, carrying out the invasion. The Great Long March extremely arduous, traveling 9,600 kilometers for a whole year to reach the province Shaanxi build a new base. On the Long March, Mao Zedong took over leadership from Tuanyi conference meeting in January of the year 1935. At this conference, Zhou Enlai leaning towards Mao, General Secretary Uncle Ko and military advisor Otto Braun, Chinese name Li Duke, was deposed. Mao joined the Politburo Standing Committee, took actual power and in 1943 was elected Chairman Politburo of the Communist Party of China. From the new base Dainan, Mao led the Communists to carry out the attack resistance against Japan, 1937 to 1945, through national, communist cooperation the second time. Here, Mao consolidated power in the Communist Party by opening a rectification campaign. At the 7th Congress of the Communist Party of China held in Yan'an in June 1945, Mao was elected chairman of the party Central Committee. Also in Yan'an, Mao separated with He Zicheng and married Lam Bin, a new actor from Yan'an who later overturned Chinese politics with the name Zhang Tan. Immediately after the end of the Sino-Japanese War, civil war continued between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party, ending with the Communist Party's victory in 1949. Chinese leader Mao Zedong was a steadfast leftist. In 1920, Mao became a man-Marxist. Year 1921 is one of the 21 founders Communist Party of China, but not until 1935, Mao became the leader of the party. Communist Party of China after two failures in 1927 and 1934. But finally overcoming it thanks to Mao Zedong taking over the leadership of the party's forces were gradually strengthened. Come 1947, Mao Zedong was preparing to launch a full-scale attack on Kuomintang government due Chiang Kai-shek top. Leader Mao Zedong Communist Party of China carried out the National Democratic Revolution to seize power in 1949, ended the militarist situation, revoked foreign concessions on Chinese territory, and abolished unequal treaties with major powers. National, laid the foundation for a unified China and began the modernization process that transformed China from an eastern country oppressed by Western empires into a powerful country above world. For 27 years, he and his comrades persistently carried out the great socio-economic reform of profound significance in China in the direction of eliminating backward medieval ruins, industrial, modernizing, making society more democratic and equal. Although in the process he made a number of mistakes that caused serious and long-term consequences for Chinese society. The losses and damages caused by Mao's policies and the movements launched by Mao were partly due to the extreme enthusiasm of the officials directly implementing them and the public. From 1949 to 1976, Mao Zedong was always the most important figure in the Chinese central government. Mao Zedong led the Chinese Communist Party to defeat the Army Republic of China due Chiang Kai-shek leader. Next Mao carried out his plans economy short-term with the help of Soviet Union to build an industrial foundation for China. With the desire to turn China into a superpower in even faster time Soviet Union once did, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward and communalization movement in the late 50s of the 20th century. This is a plan with a goal emphasize small-scale and manual production methods, conducting an unprecedented socialist experiment with the goal of industrialization to turn China into a superpower in just 10 to 20 years. Excessive haste leads to the plan failing and having to be cancelled. Along with natural disasters, wrong economic policies caused a huge famine in human history. About 37.5 million people, about 5% of China's population, died from famine due to agricultural production. Industry stagnated. After seizing power, Mao Zedong carried out many socio-economic reforms such as land reform, nationalization of all private enterprises, and the dissolution of right-wing political parties and associations. Secret, eliminating criminal gangs. Born and raised in the Chinese feudal society of the late 19th century and witnessed the feudal militarism of the late 19th century. Tan's house, Mao Zedong was greatly influenced by the lessons in Chinese history. He believes that it is necessary to forcefully suppress all opposing forces in order to stabilize a large and populous country like China. During Mao's reforms, tens of thousands of landowners, businessmen, and intellectuals were arrested or executed for being accused of rightism, sabotage, counter-revolution, foreign agents, and Chinese traitors. By 1950, before North Korea was defeated by Western forces, led by USA, attack, Mao Zedong sent volunteer troops to fight. Chinese forces pushed Western troops back 38th parallel, defended the North Korean state and held out on equal terms with Western forces for 4 years. Although it did not win a decisive victory, the Chinese army was able to fight on equal terms with Western forces, including USA, the strongest country in the world at that time, raised the national spirit of the Chinese people and Mao Zedong's prestige, because for the previous 100 years the country's army had continuously failed when fighting the West, is the stage that the Chinese consider 100 years of nationality. Mao then implemented short-term economic plans with the help of the Soviet Union to build China's industrial foundation. In the first 5-year plan, 1953 to 1957, China focused on building and developing heavy industry as the center, including the electricity, coal, iron, and steel, chemical industries. With the help of many aspects from the Soviet Union and Eastern European socialist countries, 246 important industrial projects, considered the backbone of Chinese industry, was built. From 1949 to 1955, more than 20 million copies of more than 3,000 scientific and technical books, mainly supplied by the Soviet Union, were translated and published in China, creating the foundation for a new generation of scientific intellectuals. In China, the speed of industrial production increases by an average annual rate of 18%. By 1957, industrial output had increased 140%, agricultural output increased 25% compared to 1952. Great Leap was the name given to the second 5-year plan scheduled to last from 1958 to 1963. Mao revealed the Great Leap Forward at a meeting in January 1958 in Nanjing. The central idea behind the Great Leap Forward was that the rapid development of Chinese industry and agriculture should occur in parallel. Industrialization is achieved by a huge supply of cheap labor and avoiding the need to import heavy equipment and machinery. To achieve this, Mao advocated policy implementation collectivization more extensive based on the model, third period, of the Soviet Union in rural China, where existing cooperatives would be merged together into People's Commune Giant. A pilot commune was established at Chaishan in the province Henan April 1958. Here, for the first time, private land was completely abolished and communal kitchens were introduced. At the Politburo meetings in August 1958, it was decided that these people's communes would become the new form of political and economic organization throughout rural China. By the end of the year, about 25,000 communes had been established, each with an average of 5,000 households. In these self-sufficient communes, wages and money are replaced by merit points, work points. In addition to agriculture, they incorporate several construction and light industrial projects. Mao believed that rice and steel production were the main pillars of economic development. He predicted that within 15 years of the Great Leap Forward, China's steel output would surpass that of the United States. UK. During Politburo meetings in August 1958, it was decided that steel production was set to double during the year, with most of the increased output coming from backyard steel furnaces. Mao was provincial secretary in Huizhou. An example of a steel furnace Hefei in September 1958, was said to be producing high-quality steel, although in fact this refined steel was produced elsewhere. Excited by this, Mao encouraged the establishment of small backyard steel furnaces in every commune and every neighborhood. Huge efforts from farmers and other workers were put into producing steel from scrap iron. To provide fuel for the kilns, forest trees are cut down indiscriminately, causing great damage to the local natural environment. The breaking of house doors and furniture to get firewood for kilns also happens everywhere. Pots, pans, and other metal objects were requisitioned to provide scrap iron for the furnaces to achieve production goals. Many agricultural workers were transferred from harvesting crops to helping produce steel, as were workers in many factories, schools, and even hospitals. Those who have some experience in steel production or have a basic understanding of it metallurgical, it can also be seen that the products from these furnaces are piles of low-quality raw iron and have no economic value. However, it was Mao's deep distrust of intellectuals and his belief in the enormous power of the peasantry that led him to order this massive nationwide effort without consulting the peasants. Expert. Huge efforts were made during the Great Leap Forward on such a large scale that capital construction projects were often poorly planned, e.g. irrigation, often built without consulting trained engineers. Furthermore, the experience of the intellectual classes followed 100 Flowers Blooming campaign made those who knew that such a plan was crazy not dare to criticize it. The Great Leap Forward today is loved by most people, both inside and outside China. Considered a great economic disaster, was actually a great leap forward that affected China for many years to come. When the inflated statistics reached the planning authorities, orders were given to transfer human resources to industry than agriculture. The droughts and floods of 1959 to 1961 combined with too many resources being devoted to industry led to crop failures, followed by famine. The officially recorded famine death toll in China during the years of the Great Leap Forward was 14 million, but scholars estimate that the number of famine victims was between 20 and 43 million. The 3 years from 1959 to 1962 became known as the 3 cruel years and 3 years of natural disasters. Many local officials were prosecuted and publicly executed for reporting false information. The next plan that Mao Zedong supported was the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in the 60s of the 20th century. There are many different views about the Cultural Revolution in China. According to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the Cultural Revolution was to fight with the bourgeoisie in the ideological field and use the new ideas and habits of the proletariat to change the spiritual appearance of the entire society, but there is also a view that this is a way for Mao Zedong to regain control of the Chinese Communist Party after the failed Great Leap Forward. The Cultural Revolution in China completely eliminated remaining customs. Dating back to the Middle Ages in China, worshipping to cure diseases, custom-bound feat women, but it also leaves serious consequences not only for women economy, society but also about culture. The Cultural Revolution, from its initial goal of changing the spiritual appearance of the entire society, has turned into blaming, denouncing, criticizing, denouncing, and purging each other throughout China. This revolution paralyzed China's economic, political, educational, and cultural activities, disrupt the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party and make the state no longer able to maintain social order, causing serious division in the Communist Party, in the state apparatus and in Chinese society, destruction of tangible and intangible cultural heritage. Deng Xiaoping commented that Mao Zedong was partly at fault in this, but the other part was due to the poor qualifications of his subordinates and the easily agitated public, causing the set goals to be distorted. The Cultural Revolution was a mistake. We must boldly deny this mistake made by Mao in the last years of his life. But we also need to look at the truth. The truth is that not all the mistakes and excesses during the Cultural Revolution were due to Mao Zedong. 13. The special thing is that when launching the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong was over 60 years old. The Great Cultural Revolution took place when he was nearly 70 years old, and when deciding to establish diplomacy with USA, Mao was nearly 80 years old. In early 1950, Mao Zedong also accepted arms aid and sent Chinese advisory delegations to help Vietnam fight the French. Before leaving, Mao Zedong instructed the advisory group comrades must consider the liberation cause of the Vietnamese people as their own cause. 14. Vietnam's victory over France in 1954, shortly after China forced the US to armistice in Korea, also indirectly enhanced China's position and Mao Zedong's prestige. Despite making many mistakes, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, China has initially built a foundation: heavy industry, light industry, defense industry. Background: Chinese economy has been able to produce most common industrial products, conventional weapons, and especially atomic bombs. This is the foundation for China to continue to develop under the leadership of his successor Deng.